Hey everybody, my name is Jacob Meester. I'm the SVP of Technology at Sitely, and today I'm joined by Shuang Chen, our Director of Data Science, for a conversation on AI agents. What's up, Shuang? How's it going?
Hey Jacob, pretty good, pretty good. How are you doing? Excited to talk about agent and AI today with you.
Yeah, this topic is everywhere right now. There's information all over the internet about AI agents. It seems to be the talk of the town, so to speak. So it seems like a pretty timely subject, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. Like to be honest, I don't know about you. I sometimes feel a little bit overloaded by these hype cycles that comes
Yeah.
around once a while. So yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of, the ChatGPT launch, which is interesting because, this, uh, technological advance is fundamentally different than the one, introduced with ChatGPT. A lot of people talked around the time of ChatGPT about, um language models already having, been around for a few years at that point. The Attention is All You Need paper was published in 2017, ChatGPT released in 2022. So there was a few years there where people were playing with language models, but it wasn't necessarily top of mind for the entire business world. And I think really like the innovation there was a lot of the post-training stuff that was introduced, particularly, RLHF, et cetera, that made these language models a little bit more conversational and natural to speak with.
Mm.
I remember like playing around with GPT-2 and GPT-3, and it was more of a novelty, but it didn't really seem like something you could actually use in production, right? But we took that jump from something being more of a novelty, to being user friendly so quickly that it really kind of took over the collective interest of the business world. It seems like we're in a similar place with the hype around agents now, but it doesn't quite seem like there's been the same jump in capabilities there. It seems like this has been more of a progressive a progression of technological advances that have been made over the past couple of years that are kind of coming to a head now.
Right. You know what? I think you're right. In terms of technological changes, I also haven't seen something that's like a huge step up or fundamental change. But I think what's driving the current sort of hype or a lot of attention being given to agent is sort of I would call the um, sort of the match between that and the natural way organizations work with employees. It's more of a the business world or the normal people start to get the analogy of hey now computer systems can act as agents, which is kind of like individuals completing tasks. And I think once that mindset started to shift, it really caught on in terms of people talking about how we can automate multiple things. Because previously we were thinking about LLM as just one single questions and answer workflow, and that kind of limit your imagination a little bit. By agent, that's all of a sudden uh, people that may not have a lot of technical background just think of them as employees or autonomous uh, people or digital humans that can actually do a lot of different things, and that sort of
Yeah.
match their imagination. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different definitions for agents out there. It's probably good for us to set the stage on what they are. So I see agentic AI as systems that are orchestrated by language models that interact with their environment primarily through the use of tools, and they perform multi-step actions either autonomously or semi-autonomously to achieve some user-defined goal. So I think, what has really put agents at the forefront is not necessarily the innovation of the architecture, things like React. The paper for React was published in 2022. So this current hype cycle around agents isn't necessarily driven by that. I think a big part of it is just that the language models that orchestrate agentic systems, and I often use the analogy that they're like the brain of the system, right?
Yeah.
The foundation models have gotten much better over the past couple of years. So, in like 2023, when you're playing with, agent systems, they're incredibly brittle, right? And trying to get it to perform multi-step tasks was difficult. And there was a bunch of people trying to do this stuff back then. And there's a bunch of really cool innovation around the actual agentic frameworks, but the underlying language model wasn't really strong enough to be able to perform those longer term tasks without compounding errors. So I think, just with the better language models that we've seen released, it's kind of made the field of agentic AI much more possible and more realistic for businesses to actually implement nowadays.
Yeah. You're right. I think another trend that also enable people to prototype more with agentic AI is um, the sort of plummeting of the token cost for these
Yeah.
underlying language model. And I like the fact that you mentioned the frameworks. There's just so many frameworks that came out as well. And I think the field of AI adoption or agentic AI adoption needs some kind of standardization because just by listing all these different frameworks, there are how many of them out there right now. You have LangGraph, you have Llama Index, Small Agent, Crew AI, AutoGen. Like I can go on and on. So uh, I think it's a great step forward to figuring out what's the fundamental structure and architecture for orchestrating agent in business context. So
Yeah,
I
it's
wanna know your thought
interesting.
on that, yeah.
It's interesting because you talk about frameworks, and I was more talking about it through the lens of the actual agentic architecture,
Yeah.
right? Like, thought, act, observe, or prompt chaining, or tool use more generally.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of a blurred line between the actual architectures and the frameworks nowadays, right? Because a lot of the architectures are implemented in the frameworks.
Yeah.
Um, I have mixed feelings on the agent frameworks that are out there today. I tend to think they're probably okay for things like demos and prototypes, but probably not the best in production. Usually relying on your own code is a lot better than relying on someone else's code. And then also for people who are looking to really learn about agentic AI, interacting at the lower level is going to give you a lot more knowledge about how the system actually works and allow you to be able to build out the behavior in a more nuanced fashion to the use case that you're looking to solve. So I think that's a big consideration that people should take when they're looking to develop these systems today is trying to understand things on a low level so that way the system that you build is more robust and actually can help you achieve your goals easier without having to parse someone else's logic, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And when I was talking about framework, like I was trying to think more from the motivation of these framework that pops
Mm.
out here and there. It's fundamentally, I think, the need for people who have been building enterprise software to address some of the sort of risk around having agents being autonomous and being able to wrap their heads or our heads around when you have software processes that are autonomous, um, how can we add in control around how the agent can perform? Like what type of actions can an agent perform? And
Yeah.
that's where I think some of these framework came out to suggest we might need declarative graph or some different steps for you to be able to have a view or control over what the agent do. And then there are related concerns about like security risk, responsible AI, and I think these frameworks sort of start to try to fill that gap a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because whenever there's new capabilities, and obviously new capabilities are advancing incredibly quickly in the AI space, there's so
Yeah.
many considerations that need to be addressed. You bring up security there. With new capabilities means that there's new vulnerabilities, right? Security is always a cat and mouse game. So addressing those new attack vectors that people are able to um, exploit in these types of applications is going to be an ongoing process. Um, but beyond that, I think, you know, with the advent of agentic AI becoming readily accessible, there's going to be quite a period where uh, companies are looking to adopt these systems and get them into production use cases that their users can extract value from. And I think right now, kind of where we're at is in that middle stage where we see that there's a lot of hype around this. There's a lot of people doing demo videos. We don't see a lot of applications in production yet. And once again, it's very similar to where we were at in 23, where there was a lot of excitement around language models, but we didn't necessarily see a lot of production use cases yet. And with both of these technologies, I think if we just said, okay, we have the capabilities that we have today, and there's going to be no more advances, we could do so much with the technology that we have just in our tool set today. And you even think about even like classical machine learning methods. There's so much business value to be extracted from those methodologies, but we've already moved on to generative AI, now agentic AI, and there will be future advances as well. But the business world, it takes a little while to soak that up and really bake it into all of the different use cases that it could take advantage of.
Yeah, uh, to me, it's sort of like we're moving too fast and too slow at the same time. So if you look at the social media and all these content that we get exposed to all the time, it feels like agent is happening right now. Like in 2025, every single business processes should just use agentic process. But at the same time, as actual practitioner and builders, what we're seeing is the most optimal way to apply agent may not be just to build agent into every single thing or just use agent as sort of like a blunt tool to build every single steps in your business workflow. A lot of times it might be even what we should consider those existing methods can still function as highly efficient and effective building blocks for enterprise software. An agent could just act as a certain value add on to different steps in that process.
Yeah. Something that's taught in most introductory data science courses is um, explainability is always preferred when possible, and simpler is better if all else is equal, right? So if you can use a simple rule-based engine to solve a problem, it's preferable because it's interpretable, easy to explain to the users why a certain decision is being made, easier to implement, more cost-effective, and oftentimes there's less latency associated with it in your application.
Yeah.
But as you move up the level of sophistication, let's say classical machine learning models, there's also more capabilities that are available there that you may not be able to achieve with a rule-based system, something like image classification, right? And then the same thing with large language models. Using large language models provides capabilities that maybe some classical machine learning algorithms would not be able to provide you. And then we see the same thing now with agentic systems, right? That AI agents are opening up this new world of possibilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they should be used for every single use case that you could use other tools for that are more than sufficient for, right? Um,
Yeah.
Especially when you're working with systems that are non-deterministic, like large language models and agentic systems. A lot of the times, and in many business use cases, it's much better to have something straightforward, right? But it's a little bit of how I think about these AI systems and these agentic um, frameworks and tools is utilizing them for the forefront of capabilities that aren't possible with these other algorithms.
Yeah, and another way that I like to think about agent framework and what agent is uniquely suitable for is at the orchestration layer or the layer that your software is interacting directly with human user. That's where agents stand out because it like you said before, like, it doesn't really add a lot of fundamental technological sort of shift because some of the capability exists as just pure LLM or traditional machine learning models. Let's say classification tasks for transformer model exists since 2017, right? And they're extremely good at certain things like sentiment classification, classification of text into certain topics. And I do think that where agent shines is building on top of those capability that's a lot more efficient, but synthesizing information from various places, maybe the output of those underlying uh, classical machine learning model, and being able to orchestrate different tasks, like going to a database to grab certain things, perform some kind of analysis using a tool that's more specific for it. And I think the whole agentic framework really shines when you have complex uh, goals that require orchestration and using different fundamental tools and models.
Yeah, yeah, and you talk about orchestration there, right? And it brings up this analogy that I've been using recently. And I talked earlier about language models being the brain of the uh, agentic AI architecture, right? And language models and technology in general often takes inspiration from nature, right? Which is pretty fascinating to me. But artificial neural networks are, um, I would say, analogous to a natural neural network in a human brain or in an animal brain, and those algorithms were defined and developed based off of our understanding of how the human brain works, right? But agentic AI systems are very similar in that they're helping us be able to better model and develop technology that takes inspiration from humans and how humans think. So, large language models, if you're going to use them, a vanilla language model, single step, provided some tokens, it provides you some tokens as an output. Oftentimes, the models that we use in chat interfaces are instruction tuned so that they provide the first tokens they provide you are providing an answer to whatever prompt you had provided it. But I tend to think of this paradigm as like, it kind of vomiting out the first thing that it comes up with, right? And if you were going to ask a person to solve a complex task, you wouldn't expect the first thing that they say, or even more so, the first thing that comes to their mind to be the solution to the problem, right? It's kind of a ridiculous proposition. Of course, you wouldn't do that, right? Humans, what we do is we interpret what the question or the goal is. We plan, so breaking it down into multiple steps. We execute on those individual steps. We reflect on the work that we've done. We refine it. We compile all of that work to come with some output, right? So
Exactly.
agentic systems are effectively the same thing. And it's essentially just a model that takes inspiration from how humans think and how humans perform tasks, which is pretty cool and pretty fascinating.
Yeah, totally. How do you compare the agentic system to the existing software that we have been building for decades? What makes it stand out?
Yeah. So I think one of the big changes that we're going to see with the move towards agentic AI systems and as they become more prevalent in society and business at large, we're going to see some changes in how humans interact with technology and the software industry at large. One of the big changes that I see coming is us moving towards more of a unified interface for interacting with computers. Like over the past couple of decades, we've seen a huge expansion in the world of building interfaces, right? And every SaaS company, every website has their own unique interface that has been developed to try to communicate their value to their users in a way that's intuitive for them, right?
Right.
But with the introduction of language models, we have a much more natural interface to communicate with computers and with data now. And that's just through our own language, through natural language. And it's so much more intuitive than anything else that could be developed because we grow up our entire lives utilizing this interface with other humans, right? So
Wicked.
I think that the software world is going to start to converge more on a unified interface of natural language because of the benefits that it provides there. Like, I could definitely see there being, an ecosystem of a few different, interfaces. Maybe it's a chatbot interface. It seems like the one that is becoming very popular right now, where a few
Yeah.
different providers have applications, that people, utilize, and those applications speak with all of our other tools and pieces of software that we wanna utilize um, in a way where you don't have to leave your chatbot interface, but you can still get that value
Yeah.
from those other providers. So I think that there's going to be a big shift in how the software industry works, and I think that that's going to be one of the biggest shifts is just the interface that we
Yeah.
interact with technology.
Yeah, I think you touch on a good point there about the interface between user and software, but I think there's also another piece where the interfaces that the enterprise software industry will also develop or focus is going to become agent to agent or interface between the different components across different platforms. So traditionally, this is done by traditional APIs. But right now, when a certain tasks become a lot more complex, then we do want to introduce agent in this workflow where they can autonomously plan and decide what to to do or what type of data and system to access. Then there seems to be a need for us to have or more interfaces between the agents or those process
Yeah.
for them to be able to communicate better, coordinate on task. And because of that, I can also see business model shift and transformation that start to happen. Right now, a lot of the enterprise software business model is based on uh, users' access to their UI or their data. Um, when the shift towards more agent to agent communication or interfaces that's kind of happening outside of the user's time because we're going to get more and more used to just delegating certain complex tasks to agents so that they perform those tasks in the background and give us uh, the refined output at the end. A lot of those value are being captured in interactions that users may not directly get involved with. And with with that, I almost can see some of the pricing uh, methodology shift towards shift away from subscription model or you charge people per seat for access to your software towards more of a consumption based pricing. Like how many tasks did your agent complete with my interface? being whether on Salesforce or on Zendesk. I think we've already see some kind of feature from Zendesk that says, I'm going to charge you based on the number of resolved customer ticket rather than um, how many of your customer support agent have access to my interface.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty exciting to me because I think we're starting to move towards more focus on the underlying business value. So we're talking about moving away from, you know, clunky interfaces that are difficult to learn and take a long time to onboard your team to potentially having some more unified interface that can interact with the tools that you use on a daily basis in more of a consumption based model. And I think this is like, the market working its magic, and eliminating some inefficiencies because a lot of companies will buy these software licenses for certain technologies. You have a bunch of seats, but how do you take full advantage of that, right? Unless everybody's on there 24/7, then you're not necessarily taking full advantage of the price that you're paying there versus on this consumption-based model, it seems like, software will end up being cheaper on a per use basis, which is going to which I think just makes the market so much more efficient than it currently is, and provide people more opportunities to use more tools. But even with tools becoming cheaper, I don't think that that translates into software companies making less money. I actually think it's going to mean that these software companies will make more money because these tools that they build are now going to be easier for people to utilize. So maybe in the past, where you had a few team members who never really quite got onboarded into this technology to take full advantage of it, well, now they have this nice intuitive interface to utilize those tools. So they're going to use it a lot more often. So you kind of get the best of both worlds and having technology that is more efficient, both from a UX perspective, also a price perspective. But you can see growth in the industry because it's so much more intuitive that people are much more inclined to actually utilize the technology. So it's an interesting paradox there, but I think something that we'll end up saying.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities, and you will see some of the big incumbents like Salesforce already fully trying to move in the directions of um, creating agent marketplace, allowing people to interact with the core value that their data or their processes bring to the market instead of saying, we're gonna trying to delay this innovation and so that we
Yeah.
can charge still per seat or per UI license. And there's gonna be a company that react uh, fast and be more proactive in this process, and those are going to be the AI first company that wins in this changing ecosystem.
Absolutely. And we're already starting to see some move towards, you talked a little bit about standardization and you talk about companies moving towards, agentic architectures already and providing agentic AI applications as a part of their technology suite. We're starting to see some more consolidation in the industry around some certain standards with things like model context protocol introduced by Anthropic, and then A2A introduced by Google for that agent to agent communication. What are your thoughts on these new frameworks that are coming out? If you read through them, you look at the docs and you build with these technologies. There's not necessarily like some technological advancement here, but it's more of the consolidation around standardization for communication in these technologies.
Yeah, I certainly see the benefit of having these standards created so that different uh, companies or technological vendors using AI or agentic workflows start to converge on. It's like the analogy that I have for NCP, and you hear this very often, it's like a USB-C standard. Like right now, well, before USB-C came out, we have all sorts of different plugs, and you go to, depending on the PC that you're using or whatever tools that you're using, you have to always go buy a different thing so that you can start using it. And MCPs or A2A start to give you some of these framework and standards that just speed up or facilitate the adoption and the building of these workflows. So I think since we're talking about these, maybe just I'll give the user a little, the listener a little bit more background on what's the difference between MCP and A2A. So A2A offers a standardized protocol for communication and task exchange between the agents. It's thinking about multi-agent workflows. Having this kind of standard can really facilitate the building of those type of workflows. And MCP focus more on enhancing single agent capability by allowing the agent to interact with different tools, data sources, and software assistants more efficiently. So they are actually not in uh, competing around with each other. They address um, challenges at different layers of the AI model stack.
Yeah, you know
Uh,
what it reminds me of? The introduction of MCP and A2A, and then also, I think more importantly, the adoption by the business world. Because, you can release one of these frameworks, but if no one follows it or if it's not adopted as a standard, then it does no good, right?
yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the push and the general acceptance of open source and AI prior to the release of ChatGPT. We saw, pretty much every single transformer architecture that was developed. You would have a research paper that was published, often by private companies, right? Google, Facebook, etc., and releasing of open weights, even training data in order to replicate the models. And we've kind of gone through an era where closed source has become more popular as the business value has been uh, realized on a larger scale through these technologies, and companies have realized the amount of value that they have in the IP for these models. But we're kind of seeing a little bit more of a shift back towards collaboration through the adoption of these frameworks, which I think is really promising.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Another topic around MCP or A2A is multi-agent system. What are your thoughts on it? Because there's questions about why not just use single agents that has a
Yeah.
bunch of tools, or why not just use LLMs? Why do we need multi-agent system? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's necessarily a right answer here or that the industry is necessarily agreed upon what the answer is, right? So I'll give my opinion, but it's just that. Um, we talk a little bit about simpler is better when all else is equal. And a singular AI agent with well crafted tools can accomplish so much. The possibilities are quite limitless. So I often see pieces of software where people will jump to integrating multiple different agents into a single application, maybe just because it's cool or that it's the logical next step to take in upgrading your capabilities. But there's quite a few disadvantages of doing this. In particular, agents eat tokens really fast, right? They're performing tasks autonomously in a non-linear workflow, which means that they're pretty unpredictable in how long a task may take to run. And if they're utilizing tools, they're iterating, you end up going through quite a few tokens pretty quickly. So the introduction of multi-agent systems means that you're compounding the amount of tokens that you're consuming pretty quickly. And that can be a pretty big disadvantage, one on the cost standpoint, because you're going to be consuming a much larger amount of tokens. You're also going to eat up your rate limits quicker. But it also can hurt you in a couple of different ways on the experience side. particularly around latency in your application. If you have a bunch of different agents working at one time, they may be running asynchronously, but you don't know when each one is going to complete their task, right? So it makes it's rather difficult for the user experience. But we were actually talking about this the other day. I think one of the big places where multi-agent systems are going to provide value is when different organizations have their agents working with each other, right? So instead of me developing a multi-agent system within one application, having my agentic system be able to interface with an agentic system from another organization or multiple other organizations, so that way you can realize the unique business value that all of these different companies are providing, and be able to assimilate uh, and take that information and make use of it in a more fluid fashion. Uh, yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. But what do you think of
Yeah.
the prevalence of multi-agent systems
Yeah.
over the past couple of months, and whether or not they're going to be useful?
Yeah. I think it's the I'm gonna use the same answer that a lot that is always the perfect answer is it depends, because it really involves some technical concept and what type of problem we're trying to solve, right? Multi-agent system can have benefits in two sort of group of or aspects. Number one is in terms of the quality of your final output. Number two is it address certain operational sort of deficiency of single agent system or complement a single agent system. In terms of quality, using multi-agent system allows you to sort of try and make your single agent in that collaborative system more specialized on certain things. And this is also sort of you touch on this a little bit. So if different company uh, built their own specialized agent for different things, and they have access to different data sources, then a coordination or a multi-agent system, having those single agents is going to provide you more value. And this is one way. Another way that a single agent can become more specialized within a collaborative framework or system is that they can be fine-tuned for different tasks. So that's also another area where multi-agent system can sort of beat the performance of a single agent system. It allows you to also break down very complex problem into smaller tasks. It's kind of like traditional software building principle where you can write a huge class or a huge function that does like 10 different things, but to for readability, for ease of extensibility in the future and debugging, like building those into individual function have its benefit. But of course, in the real world, you want to choose a right balance depending on what task you're trying to solve. So that's the quality aspect of using multi-agent system. Another aspect is the operational advantages. It's more scalable. You can, like you mentioned before as well, have multiple process running or multiple single agent doing different thing running asynchronously. If you have complex tasks like that, then that actually save you time rather than having one single agent do things serially. But where a single agent really shines is if you have one specific task that you need to run repetitively. For example, you need to analyze 10,000 or 10 million news trends, and each analysis is a direct duplicate of another. Then having multiple single agent having access to the same tool makes more sense. Where
Sure.
the opposite of that is like if the analysis are inherently different, then for example, one is looking at the data aspect of your trends, plotting graph. The other is more of like I'm just trying to classify this news trend into a category. And having multiple agent trained on different type of tasks can be more uh, more robust. Um, yeah, it
Yeah.
really depends at the end of
Yeah,
the day.
it depends. So going back to once revisiting one of the analogies from before, multi-agent systems once again are taking inspiration from humans in nature, right?
Yeah.
I guess in this case, more from the business world, like it makes logical sense that if you have, let's say, the language model, that's the brain, you have the agentic system that models how a human would perform tasks, and you could have the multi-agent system that models how a business would perform tasks, right? And you could have an agent for your, the different members of your C-suite, for the different people in your organization, etc. And we talked earlier about how the strengthening of the foundation model really made the agentic AI systems possible on a production basis. I think as we see these language models become stronger, you'll probably see a strengthening in the multi-agent system space as well, where you'll be able to perform more sophisticated tasks, longer term tasks. Um, which is gonna be pretty exciting. I think, a big part of this is gonna be, putting not just power back into individuals, but into smaller corporations, because we're really expanding upon what an individual is able to do you know, in their, in a shorter amount of time or in the same amount of time. Like even just utilizing, off the shelf AI tools right now, we see that businesses are gaining a tremendous amount of efficiency when they're able to utilize them effectively. But as these systems become more powerful, we'll see individuals and smaller businesses be able to achieve so much more than they have in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Like, I think we're in the phase where we are doing a lot of standardization, building exploration, prototyping to get to those use cases. Another trend I'm also seeing is within bigger enterprises, people are start to resolve some of the problems that is already partially solved by using traditional automation and traditional softwares, because using applying LLM, Gen AI, agentic workflows allow them to solve those problems in a slightly better way. So and more intuitive way. And it will be a trend that kind of continue for a while in my opinion. It's if you think about it, we can draw the a parallel to a lot of transformation in the past, the transformation from using your traditional phone to your smartphone. It the basic problem that that change is trying to solve is kind of simple. It's not that different. You ultimately you're still satisfying the needs of human to connect with each other. And then you'd see similar shift when we move from on-prem servers to the cloud. They're at the end of the day compute resources, but just a shift in paradigm that allow you to solve existing problem in a much more efficient way. And at the same time, obviously, they open up a lot more new use cases. Smartphone is much, much more capable than traditional phones, and cloud setup allow you to do a lot more. And I think what we're experiencing now, it's also using Gen AI, using agentic workflow, allow the business users to solve more and more problems. But we're still in the stage where we're trying to build out some of the standardization, basic ground rule for engagement. How do we uh, sort of evaluate the output from this kind of system, putting in guardrail to make sure everything works with our expectation. Um, I'm actually very excited for the outcome. But I want to sort of go back to something we mentioned before, which is the hype cycle of this. Recently, there's a news about a group of professors from CMU who staffed a full company just using autonomous agents. And the result is that obviously they fail miserably on the task they designed for that group of agents to perform as just normal company employees. I think they have an agent from yeah, Anthropic being a HR employee, and they have a model from a different provider be the CFO and ask them to complete tasks. What are your thoughts on that? Like, it's is that an indication of that there's unrealistic expectation, or is that an indication of real progress? What do you think?
I think it's always good to push boundaries.
Mm,
But I think at the same time, there's a tendency for people to um, think about AI systems as replacements as opposed to augmentations, which I think is the wrong way to position this in your mind. Um, these AI systems are most powerful when collaborating with humans. And they allow humans to be able to perform, to complete more work than before, do, more creative work than before, brainstorm faster, collaborate more efficiently. But when, it doesn't work out so well when you use it as a replacement. For example, if you're a college student and you're using AI to cheat on every assignment, you're really just cheating yourself because you're not learning anything, right? Or if you're at your job and you're utilizing AI to complete your work for you as opposed to collaborating with AI to complete your work, then you're not necessarily leveling up your own skills. But you're also likely not providing, and most certainly not providing the highest quality work that could be possible if you were collaborating with those AI systems.
mhm.
So yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I love the creativity in coming up with ways to push the boundaries of these systems. But ultimately, I look at them as an augmentation of human capabilities,
Mhm.
and it's going to carry us a very far way. But there's a lot of skepticism, but also fear from people that these systems will be utilized to replace. I don't tend to think about it in those terms. I tend to think of it more as how can we utilize these systems to empower ourselves and be able to be more productive and provide more values as individuals.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that point. Like one question that I always get asked in the industry or in the field is what are some of the challenges that uh, we think exist in terms of enterprise or organization adopting AI? And I think the way I would break it down is there's a technological aspect of this. The challenge is to actually get the AI systems in place to perform to a level that actually meets expectation and actually solve the problem. But there's a whole other aspect that I like to think about in terms of roadblock to AI adoption across any industry is the social aspects of it. Because ultimately, organization are not going to be 100% consist of only AI agents. Human always have a role to play in organization or in the society in general. And one of the um, sort of uh, aspect I see people of executives or people pushing for AI adoption that do not pay a lot of attention to is getting uh, users and employees uh, to learn and be more receptive to the idea of having AI as their partner just in
Yeah.
solving problems. And I think I that has to do with the way we are communicating the benefits of AI. That also has to do with how we are selling or promoting AI in the industry. I'll give an example, right? So a lot of companies start to release their AI transformation tenants or their manifesto recently, and I've seen two companies that I want to talk about as example. We have company A that has a long list of AI manifesto or like tenets. Two of them stood out to me. One is you have to prove that AI cannot do it before you hire. Another is if you're not climbing, you're sliding. So that's company number A, and these are two bullet points from their tenant. Company B has three bullet points that stood out to me. It says start with AI for every task. Second point, spend 10% of your time learning. And a third point, technical excellence still matters. So comparing the type of tone to communicate similar messages between company A and B, you can start to see um, the difference. Company A's sort of tend to focus more on just the buzzwords, right? Like tend to invoke more emotional responses from the readers or their own employee. If you're working as their department heads, you might be thinking, all right, I will just have less headcount for next year, or it invokes some kind of fear that AI is going to replace me. I'm falling behind or something like that. Whereas company B's um, sort of communication focus a lot more on how to get people start to learn. Um, it's more pragmatic and mission oriented. Even though at the core, both company are trying to communicate exactly the same thing. Using AI is going to make you more efficient and allow you to do more. Um, what's your thought on this?
Positioning matters.
Yeah.
Positioning matters, and perception means a lot. And I don't think that a lot of these different problems or challenges around integration of AI systems have been completely resolved. But it's good to see the industry working together to come up with standardization. And it's exciting to see all of the new capabilities and think about everything that we're going to be able to achieve utilizing these technologies and the things that we're already achieving utilizing these technologies. So the future is incredibly bright. And I know that we could go for another couple hours on this topic, Shuang. And I want to thank you for going over the subject with me. Always exciting talking about this kind of stuff. Um, Glad to share it with the audience as well. We'll likely do more of these in the future. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. And thank you, Shuang, again. And we'll catch you guys next time. All right, you guys.